Good morning. I'm Hank Hyatt, Senior Vice President of Economic Competitiveness at the Greenville Chamber. Thank you for joining us this morning for our Community Matters series. We do these webinars every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you can find past recordings as well as our upcoming schedule at www.greenvillechamber.org. Housekeeping notes. First, all attendees should be on mute, and you can submit questions through the chat feature. We'll be looking at that throughout the conversation today and taking questions for our speakers throughout our dialogue. First, to set the stage, today's talk is entitled A Virtual Global Update. As we all know, Greenville is an international community, home to more than 500 companies internationally, representing at least 38 countries. And we want to talk today a little bit with some leaders about how this global perspective has impacted companies in the upstate, especially during this time of COVID pandemic. Joining us today, we've got Carson Cato, Chief Supply Officer for AFL, Jim Ray, CEO of Docs24, who is joining us from his home office in Scotland, and Jay Rogers, partner at Nelson Mullins law firm here in Greenville, South Carolina. First, really to start us off today in this conversation, I thought I might ask each of you to provide a quick overview of your company, where you're located. They may not be familiar with your product offerings, what you do, and your role within the company. And I think just to get things going, we'll start with Carson, and then go to Jim, and then Jay. So Carson Cato, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. This is me. Appreciate it. I work for a company called AFL. AFL is America Fujikura, a wholly owned subsidiary of Fujikura out of Tokyo, Japan. And we are headquartered in Duncan, South Carolina. We have suppliers, customers, and manufacturing around the globe, in excess of 5,000 employees. And our product is in the field of telecommunications. Think of it as fiber optics. So anything that could be cabled into fiber, that would be us. And then data centers and the large hyperscale companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook and Microsoft are big customers to us. So we are excited about being here, and I'll leave it at that. I'm the Chief Supply Officer, and I have global responsibility for logistics, procurement, sourcing, contract manufacturing, international trade for the company.
Thanks, Carson. Jim.
Hi, I'm glad to be here, but over here in Scotland anyway. So my name's Jim Ray. I'm the Chief Executive of Docs24. We're a tech-enabled process outsourcing business, headquartered in Scotland. We also have an office in Greenville, South Carolina, and we'll be opening up in Atlanta in the next month or so as well. We create document platforms for our global clients and data algorithms so that we can create highly bespoke pieces of content, make life easier, faster for everyone. We shift content around the globe digitally or in hard copy through our global supply network. So our largest client is a big pharma company. I think this year we're saving them about $7 million on our distribution costs, returned about 55,000 lost hours back to them. So it's all about process efficiencies for us.
And Jay.
Hank, Jay Rogers. I'm, as Hank said, a partner with the Nelson Mullins law firm here in Greenville. I practice in the international business area, so we help foreign clients who are doing business in the U.S. and American clients who do business overseas. So my primary areas of focus are in international trade and the issues related. I'm sorry? international trade. And so what we've been doing a lot lately is helping, in particular, foreign businesses qualify for these SBA programs that are designed to support U.S. employment. And then the latest sort of hot issue is this immigration order from the Trump administration and how to comply with that, and what that's doing to both work visas and permanent visas, or AKA green cards. So that's the kind of thing that we do here. Very good.
Well, thank you, Jay. And you've been very involved. I know, I think all of y'all may have been involved with the European American Chamber of Commerce. Jay, you chaired the GADC board. So again, all of y'all understand the importance of the international business community. So thank y'all for jumping in today.
Absolutely.
So Jim, from your perspective, how do you think the government reaction in the UK has differed from the US? We've heard a lot of stories. Sounds like you've been on lockdown for some time now. How have you seen it unfold in the UK, and what's your day-to-day life like right now?
Well, my day-to-day life is not quite as exciting as it used to be when I used to go to the office. So we've been working from home for 6 weeks. We've been on government lockdown for a month. And we have another at least 3 weeks of that ahead. But from listening to the government information today, that looks like it's going to be extended out. So most non-essential businesses have been closed in the UK for a month now, which is pretty much decimated hundreds of thousands of companies' revenue lines. There's been as there has been in the US, there's been a government support package of £330 billion in a multitude of ways. So a lot of companies have furloughed their staff, but the government are paying 80% of their salaries so that companies don't lay them off or make them redundant and keep them. And that's available for 3 months. And there are loans similar to the loans that are going on in the US, which have been 80% backed by the government. I think some companies have found it much more difficult to get the loans from the banks, which has caused its own problems. Our UK clients are pretty much closed, although our international clients are still working with us. We've got some projects on in the US, which has been great, and the use of Teams has clearly been helpful. We've obviously got people in the US as well, so we're on video calls every day. It sounds like you guys are starting to ease some restrictions off and allowing some businesses to get back to some sort of normality. By, I know, tomorrow in Georgia at least. UK, that's just not going to happen. We're going to be on lockdown for a lengthy period of time. And I guess the scientists and the people who are much smarter than me are saying the longer that we're at home, the quicker we can hopefully get rid of this pandemic. Unfortunately, it looks like the UK will end up having probably the largest death toll in Europe. And of course, the US has sadly been affected by that also. And I think where you seem to have large, huge airport hubs seem to be where some of the problems have been, such as New York and London in particular. I'd rather be at the office, but I'd rather people were safe and well. And I guess when we come out of this in the UK or the US, business is just not going to be the same anymore. How we went into this is certainly not how businesses are going to come out, and some sadly are not going to make it.
There will be a new normal. What it's going to look like,
yes,
be defined.
Yeah.
You talked about, Jim, about the government people being able to apply for funding through the government for support, either unemployment or for the companies directly. I want to turn it over to Jay real quickly because given the number of international firms in our region, there's been a lot of confusion over whether or not foreign-owned companies with U.S. presence can qualify for things for support under the CARES Act. Can you provide some clarity around that, Jay?
Sure. You're absolutely right, Hank. There was a lot of confusion about that in the initial rollout. The CARES Act actually is pretty clear that foreign-owned companies do qualify. I think the confusion arose from the fact that the SBA's traditional lending programs did disqualify foreign-owned companies, and so a lot of the SBA forms that were online that people were trying to fill out would have questions about foreign ownership, and they would say things like, are you foreign-owned? If so, end of story. And so the SBA struggled to sort of redo those forms, and I think that was the source of a lot of confusion. But the CARES Act is pretty clear that if you're foreign owned, as long as you have a U.S. presence and U.S. payroll, then you would qualify, for example, for the payroll protection program. But it was a big mess, particularly. And then about a week after the program went live, the SBA issued interim guidance that clarified that, and that helped a lot. But it was a big mess.
Just amazing how a small item on a form makes such a big difference.
Yeah, particularly these online forms are so rigid. I mean, you get to a point, and if it's a quote required field and you can't fill it out, then you're sort of stuck. And I had a lot of clients dealing with exactly that issue.
I think it goes back to some of the what's the infrastructure look like, the governmental infrastructure and IT and all these things that's all kind of coming to the fore now. I think equipped our way to handle these sorts of situations. And I think AFL is kind of in that space in terms of the fiber optics, and they're seeing a lot of almost opportunity, but I think it's the demand for that sort of services is becoming more and more apparent. And AFL is really probably the most global company we're talking to on the call today. You've got presence in the U.S. and Asia, elsewhere. Carson, from your perspective, did the global locations, the global mindset of AFL help prepare y'all here in the upstate? And what have y'all learned from your vast network of companies across the globe that's impacting your upstate operations during this time?
It's an interesting question, Hank. AFL has a kind of a large strategy of buying materials, making product, and selling in region. So we have a footprint that basically is Asia, Europe, the Americas, and then India, Australia kind of on their own. So we buy, make, and sell in region is generally the strategy. So, we were already set up in that format. With the, early on, the Trump tariffs, we have a large presence in China. And the Trump tariffs kind of jump-started this before the COVID. But having the large presence in China, we had already started to really de-risk our China footprint. So when the COVID pandemic hit in China, which was first, we were already on our way to Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia. So we were already moving out of China and de-risking our total supply chain anyway, but we were able to move product into Mexico, into India, into other locations. So yes, it helped us to kind of be prepared and set up early on. And some of the specific learnings that were applicable to our U.S. operations came from our operations in China. Temperature checks, sending people home, kind of operational, tactical stuff about how they communicated. So it did help us.
In your Duncan footprint, you've got a large number of employees. How have operations there changed as a result of this?
Yeah, we're classified as an essential business. We're in the telecommunications field, so we can continue to run. We did send our office personnel home, and we've learned to work remotely like most others, and kind of convinced ourselves that we can run the company remotely and be pretty successful at it. Our employees that are continuing to manufacture product have done an outstanding, stellar job, displaying courage and loyalty to the company by coming in every day and making product. And we've been able to run through this basically uninterrupted, and our customers are quite appreciative of it. So we're entering into a different new normal, I think, like everyone else.
Gotcha. And did you mention getting involved with some PPE manufacturing as well?
Yeah, I did. We've got an employee, Kelvin Turner. He's gotten some local news coverage, and he has taken our 3D printer operations and converted them into face shields for the local medical hospitals. He's done, I think, 250 face shields to date, and so we're real proud of the work that he's done, and glad that we could help. And so it's online. You can look it up. Pretty proud of the work that Calvin's done.
Okay, thank you all for doing that. That's great. And Carson, you mentioned, in a sense, de-risking different investment strategies across the globe, and we're hearing that again, the COVID-19 issue is accelerating a lot of things that are already in place. Things around Brexit, tariffs, again, investment strategies across the globe. That is accelerating what's happening already. From Jay, from your perspective, and then Carson, from your perspective, what are you seeing in terms of COVID accelerating, whether it's Brexit, EU issues, or other issues you're hearing from your international clients?
Sure. You're absolutely right, Hank. I think it is accelerating some trends that were already in place. As Carson was mentioning, in terms of reshoring, bringing production back to the U.S. or at least to NAFTA or the Western Hemisphere. All of those, I think companies are realizing that, saving a few pennies on, putting your supply chain in a part of the world that may or may not be politically risky. They're rethinking all of those things, and those trends were in place before, but COVID certainly has accelerated those trends. That's going to be good and bad for the U.S. I think mostly good. I think it'll bring some production back here. I think it'll also encourage some foreign companies that want access to the U.S. market to move production here. So I think on balance, it's probably a good for the U.S. It may be, I'm not so sure it's good for globalization as a whole. I think it'll slow down at a minimum, if not reverse, some of the globalization we've seen for the last 30 years. And so that's going to have, wide-ranging impacts, and in some industries more so than others. I mean, national security, armaments, military procurement has always been, the military's always taken the attitude, we want to produce it here in the U.S. for obvious reasons, even if it's cheaper overseas. I think you're going to see that accelerate, and obviously the medical area. Nobody likes the fact that we're sort of dependent on China for a lot of this PPE. And then, other areas, maybe to a lesser extent, you'll see the same thing for again, security reasons and just de-risking.
Yes, not just airplanes and armaments that need to be produced.
Yeah.
It's PPE, it's simple things that keep us healthy. So Jim, from your perspective, in the UK, a lot of countries in the EU that have reacted differently to the issues and have seen different results. What do you see this as? How do you see this impacting the EU and Brexit and just the general political scene over there, economic scene, I should say?
So unfortunately, Scotland as a country, we're pretty much against Brexit. Of course, we're only a very small part of the United Kingdom, so we've kind of got dragged out, I suppose, against our will to a certain extent. But there really has been. There's been no change on a day-to-day basis at the moment, but I think that's partly because of the current situation we're in with regards to COVID-19. And I'm not too sure we will see much of a difference for the next year or two. There's a lot of stuff still to get sorted out from a government perspective, and we're tied in to a certain extent over a period of time as we phase ourselves out. We're not part of the EU anymore, but we're still tied in to a certain extent in certain areas. But I think that it will have a problem. There will be a problem with manufacturing. So if you're having to procure products externally or sell products to parts of the EU, there will certainly be tariffs put onto materials. For us, we're a technology and services business, so we don't rely on purchasing anything from outside of the UK or anywhere else for that matter. So it'll have less effect on us, but for car manufacturing or other types of manufacturing or steel or power or whatever, I think it will have an effect at some point. But to what extent, I think it's still too early. But it's certainly going to change, and I guess from a manufacturing point of view, it'll have the biggest effect on them. From a monetary point of view, I don't think we quite know how it's going to pan out, but I suspect that in the UK we'll end up paying more taxes than we did before.
Understand that. So, so much of the discussion right now, you mentioned this earlier, Jim, is centered around reopening and recovery, like the decision by the Georgia governor basically to reopen.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing? What do you expect to happen? What's your strategy as a business moving forward for reopening and getting things going again, from your perspective, Jim's view?
So we're in a fortunate position that we've got multiple projects that we're currently working on in the US and in Germany, Austria, and France. In the UK, and I should have maybe explained by way what lockdown means for us. So we are, unless you're a key worker, we are forced to work from home, so you cannot go out, and we are only allowed out for 1 hour a day to exercise, unless you're going for groceries or to the pharmacy. So when I mean lockdown, we really are at home. So we're not allowed out at all. So the police have been stopping people in their cars, asking where they're going. If they're not from that area, they're getting fined. So it's pretty strict at the moment. I genuinely don't think we're going to see an easing of these restrictions until at least the end of May. Some companies will possibly be allowed to start opening on a phased manner, but I guess what the government are trying not to do is to flip the switch back on, allow everyone to go back to some sort of normality, have a second wave of COVID, and then lock it down again, because they reckon that will have a much worse effect on the economy by flipping on and flipping off businesses, rather than keeping them all closed for a period of time, then phasing them open. I think in general terms, nobody thinks we're going to get back to some sort of normality until 2021.
What about Carson, from your perspective at AFL? What are you looking at in the probably short term, midterm, and long term?
So this this virus has moved around the globe at a different pace. So every country is at a different point in their apex of their curve. So what's happening in China, they're going through the second and third phases of the COVID. In the US, we're still in the first phase. And so each location, India is still in complete lockdown. We have some businesses in Canada, they're at a different stage. Mexico operations are at a different stage. So I think it's such a regional specific point in the COVID that we're at different stages in each location. But in general, we're going to be, measured and cautious about bringing people back all at once. It's likely we bring, office personnel back slowly in tranches. We're talking about, should people wear masks? Should they not? Should they be allowed to? Should we take temperature? Should we not? Each location, again, is different. So those discussions are going on. I think for us, as we exit this thing, we'll be more prepared for the next time, whatever the next time is. I don't think we're going to get caught short of preparedness. So I think on the backside of this, there will be a lot of really due diligence on what to do in case of X, whether X is a virus or a tornado or a tariff. So I think the scenario planning for us will be more robust.
Yeah, I think we are going to be, like I say, better prepared. Infrastructure, policies, procedures. Let's give Jay from a legal perspective. Would you like to add to that point of where do you see us going, and again looking at the future, it's impacting what y'all do and the types of things y'all are working on. So,
yeah, I tend to, from what I am hearing and seeing, I sort of agree that it's going to be and should be a pretty localized decision-making process. I think Georgia is very different from New York City, obviously, and so I think that recognizing that different areas of the country have different risk profiles. The more sparsely populated areas of the country, I think, have lower risk. I think this genie's out of the bottle, and we're not going to put it back in. And so I think we are going to have to get back to work, and take, obviously, the precautions that we can. But it may be that we are stopping and starting and seeing hot spots pop up, and those have to be tamped down with lockdowns. But in general, the trend is going to be toward getting back to work and doing it in a smart fashion. We're trying to help clients get through that. One of the issues that we're seeing is sort of what is your legal exposure when you start to reopen, and one of your employees gets sick and God forbid they die. What's the company's exposure to that? I think Congress and the state legislatures probably going to have to take a look at that sort of exposure and see, does it make sense to cap it in some way? I don't know what that answer looks like. If not, you're probably looking at an avalanche of lawsuits, when all this settles out, where people say, oh, well, I was forced to go back to work. I really didn't want to. And because of it, or my, family member got sick and died. And, is that a workers' comp claim? Is it a lawsuit? I don't know. I think we're sort of working through that. But that's going to be, when all this settles out, that will be a big issue that we're going to have to sort out from a legal standpoint.
Gotcha. There is going to be a new normal and lots of changes afoot. But again, opportunities, business communities always stepping up, being innovative, trying things out. So the good things ahead in the days ahead. So we kind of end these sessions with something positive, uplifting. Carson, you shared the story of your employee who's doing the 3D printing. Is there anything else y'all would care to talk about this as this, story of innovation or compassion that you've heard that you want to leave us with, or a few words of uplifting message, put it that way? And Carson, you want to start off? Anything from your end?
I just think, I'm really, I can't speak to the other companies, but I'm really proud of what I've seen within AFL. The way the entirety of the company, the entirety of the team has come together. And I think part of that is, of course, the leadership, in the way they've treated this is outstanding. But also, it's one of the learnings is that communication has been so important. Our communications from our marketing team, from our from our outward-facing groups, and just the way we've communicated, more frequently and more openly, I think has really brought us together as a team. So I think that's kind of interesting to me, that it's made us stronger through this difficult time.
Makes sense. So, Jay, from your perspective,
I guess one of the things that has been fascinating and I think encouraging is that it's shown the strength of sort of the Western approach to problem solving, and I guess we'll only know really 2 or 3 years from now when we look back, or 5 years from now, who so to speak got this right. But I think our system of experimentation, decentralized decision making, and that kind of thing, innovation, is going to get us through this. There's some talk now that, well, other countries that have taken a more authoritarian approach have done a better job of tamping this down. But I think in the end, it's, like I said, the genie's out of the bottle. And so dealing with it is going to require innovation and flexibility. And I think that plays to America's strengths and the strengths of the West. And so it's been fascinating to watch these different countries, different states in the U.S., different countries in Europe. We haven't talked much about the Swedish model. Everyone loves talking about Swedish models. But anyhow, they've taken a completely different approach to this. And to me, it's going to be fascinating to see if in the long run, they really got it right. And we got it, we overreacted with the lockdowns. We'll see. But we've got, all these different laboratories running. And to me, it's fascinating to see. And everyone's sort of working together to try to figure out, because there was no playbook for this. But people are working together to try and figure it out. And I think we'll come out the other side stronger.
Definitely. So, Jim, from your seat in Scotland, and final words.
So I agree with Carson. I think the working on remotely on videos on a daily basis is actually brought our team closer together. We've got to know each other much better. We've got to know families much better. And actually what we found is from the guys, it's because we've not got all our clients working on a daily basis, we've found such innovation, creativity from all our guys, and planning of what life will be like and how we will get out of this with a big smile on our face. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We've got a little ways to get there, but the planning, innovation, and creativity these guys have come up with has been fantastic and great to see on a daily basis. I think these guys have grown individually and as a team, working remotely.
Thank you. I think we see that same sentiment at the chamber, that it has brought us together as a team, and we're more focused, more, it's just improved the quality and the work product. So good things come at trying times in some cases. I don't see any questions unless Andrew cuts in from our attendees. And it's actually 10:37, so we're running a little bit behind, but I want to thank you, Carson. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jay, for sharing part of your day and your insights with us this morning.
Sure.
This recording will be shared on the Greenville Chamber's website and will also be sent to attendees along with the survey. If you get the survey, please take a few minutes to take it. We'll have great programming moving forward. And this is part of an ongoing series. Next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, we will host a chamber-oriented discussion, sharing results from the recent Business Impact Survey, talk with our SVP of Business Advocacy on what's going on at the local, state, and federal level, and the Chamber's role in charting a path forward for the community. So, again, thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Thank our attendees, and from the Chamber, stay safe and be well.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Hank.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.